Our next storyteller is Barbara Ching. She's professor of English and department chair. She's the author of many articles on rural identity, popular music, and film. And she has served as the executive secretary of the North American Mycological Society, a citizen science group, since 2015. And her story is called, I Should Have Said I Wanted to Be an Ethnomycologist.
So I'm not sure why I'm the last speaker, but I think one maybe significant difference is that I'm trained as a humanist and came to science later, and I heard several stories that work the other way around. When I was a chatty, why-asking toddler, my grandmother could capitalize on my curiosity and wonder in order to buy time for herself. She'd hand me a salt shaker and tell me that if I could catch a bird in the backyard, I could keep it. Out I'd go, running until I was exhausted, and it took me a long time to figure out that I couldn't catch a bird with a salt shaker. But I never gave up on my grandmother and her kitchen utensils. One day, while I was buzzing about, peppering her with questions, she opened a can of mushrooms, ugly lumps in a salty, buttery liquid, heated briefly, and then poured into a bowl. They were delicious. I asked for a canful for my birthday dinner ever after. That our big backyard, the forest and its trees, were the true home of these canned wonders, wonders that I could actually capture with my senses and then my hands, eluded me as a child. I never even asked. And now, reading family cookbooks, I can see that they knew, even if no one told me where and when to find them in the woods. Perhaps I would poison myself by pulling a mushroom, salt shaker in hand, my hungry mouth just an arm's length away. Is that why they didn't tell me? Or because Grandma, at least, was doing things a modern way, eating mushrooms from cans? We weren't city folk. We lived in ag land, and that's not the same as living in the country. It's an in-between state. One family cookbook shows Grandma's sisters in their vast gardens, shows them standing in streams with their fly fishing poles, shows them hunting for nuts and berries. But they never told me. The cookbook does feature a lovely portrait of my wily grandma in matching faux pearl necklace and earrings. So maybe they didn't want me to know. Just a little bit older, sitting on my uncle's lap, an uncle known for his secret knowledge of where the best patches of wild watercress grew, the roles reversed. He asked me a hard question. Trite now, but stunning then. What do you want to be when you grow up? I had no idea. I asked him what he was. He answered with what he did. I cut out sheep stomachs, he said. All day, I asked. All day, he affirmed. I don't want to do that. Then you have to go to college, he said. I note now that no gender expectations were expressed, or if they were, I forgot them. But like the story of how those mushrooms got in a can, I didn't think to ask, and they didn't tell me how you get to college. Off I went, golden book under my arm, going to college. The whole family had to come and find me and reel me back in. Many of us in this family worked at ag land jobs, at the meatpacking plant, at the John Deere factory, or farming, or literally feeding their large families. My father had gone to college with the sheep stomach logic. His neighbor worked as a baker in the middle of the night and told him that he had to go to college if he wanted the assurance of a comfy day job. So I went to college for a very long time and learned that the questions never stopped, that what I was going to be when I grew up was the same exhausting, why-asking toddler that I was born as. But I should have said, or could have said, that I wanted to be an ethnomycologist, someone who gathers mushrooms and the stories about how we know them, how we use them, and why we love them. The birds, the flowers, the mushrooms stay with me like the family stories and pictures. Strangely, I don't remember when I decided to chase after mushrooms, but I constantly experience them as something that I can hold with my hands, something that I can know with my senses, and something that I need a large group of people to help me know. The stories of many of them disappeared with the language of North America's first inhabitants. Robin Wall Kimmerer, who will be here on campus next month, has an excellent essay about this, how relearning the language of our ancestors, the Potawatomi language, brought the word for mushrooms into her vocabulary, and how she learned that to the Potawatomi speakers, this also means the life force, something that just pops up overnight from the ground and is living, and that you have to figure out what to do with, what it can be. DNA sequencing has changed the stories of the mushrooms we thought we knew. Nobody even knows yet whether the mushrooms that we find on this continent are the same mushrooms that at least my family, my ancestors were eating on another continent before they came here. Mycologist Nick Money estimates that more than 70,000 mushroom species have been described, but the numbers that remain on stories count into the millions. When the mushroom group that I hunt with here in Iowa began to thin out, I applied for a small part-time job as the executive secretary of the North American Mycological Association. This is a group of citizen scientists, as Michael mentioned, of writers, doctors, musicians, photographers, farmers, toddlers. There people bring their children to the events who want to know more about mushrooms or who want to share what they know about mushrooms. What I get to do is answer their questions. Last week, a journalist, a New York Times writer, contacted me for help in writing the obituary of a noted field mycologist who had died. Last night, someone contacted me because he believes he has identified a new mushroom species and didn't know what to do with this discovery, how to get it out there, how to have it maybe affirmed that he indeed identified a new species. So off we go together to find out how to tell this story, to find out how to get it confirmed, how to get it peer-reviewed, how to get it published and shared, the story of how a new species was found, or perhaps more likely, but perhaps just as interesting, how someone thought they found a new species but didn't, found a slight variation that may be just as interesting, just as useful, just as beautiful as the mushrooms we don't yet know.